Welcome to the Geeky Workbench. This is the one I've been building towards for weeks. The rover is painted, the hangar is weathered, and today we close the whole thing out, with lights, terrain and a final assembly that either works beautifully or falls apart at the last second. Spoiler, it's a bit of both. If you're just joining us, this is episode 4 of a 4-part series. Episodes 1 through 3 we covered the printing and priming, painting the hangar and detailing the rover itself. This is where all of that comes together. The plan today is straightforward in theory: build a small terrain base for the hangar to sit on, wire up the LEDs in both the rover and the bay, and made all 3 pieces into one complete scene. In practice there are about 15 things that could still go wrong, but that's kind of the point, isn't it? Okay, so today's task is to make a base for the diorama or for the hangar. First of all, I need space for the batteries for the lights. And also, I don't like the idea that these support feet that are holding the hangar bay are just hanging in the air. So I want a bit of terrain so they actually have a use in this diorama. And I've got some XPS foam with a smaller option, and probably just use the cut off edges as guidance and add a little bit of terrain to the side here and here. That's what I'll do. Yeah, it's not the most interesting angle, but the main side is over here anyway, so this is just a little bit of extra. I think I'm leaving it as it is for now and wait until the terrain paste is on, and if I don't like it then I can still chop things off. For the terrain paste I'm using white glue, sand and a bit of paint. I mostly use green and red because I have lots of that and that makes brown. But you could also use black. Yeah, and I just go by feel, to be honest. Till around here, this part is the bay and it sits in the terrain, so I'm just taking a bit of the paste away here, so I have a little bit of higher ground over on the side without the hangar bay. While the glue is still wet, I can add a few stones of gravel, different sizes. This is shrimp gravel. In the movie you can see a few larger pointy stones facing upward and a few smaller stones surrounding those, and they look like they're placed there very deliberately, so I'm trying to mimic that here as well. And now I'll add the shrimp gravel for even smaller stones and just spread a few between the bigger ones. Okay, I think that's enough for now. I'll let it dry and then we'll have another look. And now it's time to get the lighting sorted on the hangar. So we've got quite big lamps and in the ceiling part as well. And my original plan was to use these LED filaments because they have roughly the same length as the openings and they are powered by 3 volts and they are pretty simple, but I'd have to do a lot of soldering here and I also have the car to do, and I just recently found these thin strips and I think they're there will be much less work involved to get these wired up and soldered, so I think I'm going with this. And for maximum brightness, they are laid out for 12 volts, and but I usually use 9 volts. I have lots of those, so I just tested this, and I'm okay with the brightness. So I think I'll just stick to 9 volts in a dark setting without light. And this model is designed with tunnels for those openings, and they all end here, so I can get the wiring here and the battery in the foam base. So now I have to just get the wires through and down to there and attach the LED strips in those places. I've prepared the LED strips, heat shrink tube and the cut wires. Now I can do some soldering. Now I've got the two strips ready, the bottom and the top. Now I have to feed them through the tunnels and connect them then. Yeah, I thought that might happen. It's too soft, so I can't push it through. Maybe a bit of heat shrink will help. Let's see. Yep, that was the right idea. Awesome. So the bottom lights are in, and got the top lights in, but on this side it's just a bit short, and I think I have to take it out again and add a longer strip to that end. I added another set of 3 to the strip right at the end, so this one is now long enough to feed both lights. And now I have to get wires from this one down to the bottom, and the same for this one back here. And I don't think I can film this because it's already quite crowded here. Lights are still working. I always check because I could have broken something easily here. It was a very tight fit. And that's all the wiring for the hangar bay ready. But I'm not adding the light covers in just yet because something could go wrong while I put it onto the base. So I'll leave it until last, and then I can add these light covers. That means now it's time for the rover. So my idea is for this middle console, that's where all the wires come together, that I feed all the wires I need from the lamps and these front lights, feed them all in and combine them here in the middle. And also there will be lights in the back. They go on the undercarriage and behind the wires, behind the tires, and they feed in here as well. And even though there are tunnels, this one is pretty easy because you can just go straight in and you'll land here in the middle console. But this one makes a turn, and it's quite difficult to get the wire in around the corner. Would be better maybe in the model to have something diagonally. Okay, finally got the wire through here. It took I think half an hour or so, and I had to drill open this hole for the side lamp bigger so I could then get inside here. Yeah, but I think that's the first difficult lamps to do. There are also LEDs for this monitor and here for the middle console, and there's one for this monitor in the back here and here, but those are fairly easy to reach, so I'm doing the back first. So in these back lamps there is a hole where you can feed the wire through, and then it comes out on this side and should go along the undercarriage. Yeah, it's not a very direct path. It's around the corner here as well. I don't know why it can't be a straight line in the model file. Okay, so the wire won't go through, and I'm not spending another half hour on this, so I'm making my own straight path. Here. Why not make the model like this? I don't understand it. It's unnecessarily complicated to put a corner inside here. And you won't see that hole anyway. It's just a few millimeters to the side. So that could have been easier in the model. And now these little hoops, they would fit, but the steep angle here is too steep for the wire then to bend. So these little hoops would maybe be better here in the middle, so you don't have this very steep angle to bend the wire. So I'll probably just glue it on there and not use these hoops. Or you'd have to use a very, very thin wire to bend round here, but yeah, that's what I've got. And we get inside the cockpit through a hole on the side here, and that should be fine because it's quite big. Now that the wires for the front and rear lights are all installed, I prepared some LEDs for the front monitor, the back monitor and the console. And for these are I think 3mm. And for all other lights I'm using SMD LEDs. They're much smaller and they are plain white. And before I can do any soldering, I have to decide which kind of battery I'm using, and I was thinking this is quite a tight space, and I usually do a combination of series and parallel, but it's just so tight in here, and the easiest way would be just to do a parallel circuit. That means combine all the positives and all the negatives and then attach those to the power source. And in this case I want to fit it inside the car because I want the power source to be mobile, just like the car, in case I want to take it out of the diorama and not fix it to the diorama. And the only way to do that is to attach the battery pack inside here. That fits, but it's just a small battery that goes in here, has 3 volts, but the capacity is not very large, especially if you take 9 LEDs like I'm planning in here. And yeah, that's not very energy efficient, but that's the easiest for now. I would have liked to use a 9 volt because that just lasts longer, but then I'd have to add resistors to all of these 9 LEDs, and that was just a bit much. And I'd have to put this battery pack inside here, and that's just too big. So I just decided I'm not going to use these small SMD LEDs for the back. They are great for tight spaces, but they also break easily. I'm going to use these 3mm LEDs instead. They're quite durable, they don't break as easily, and I just did a test fit. I had to drill open the hole a bit bigger so I could fit the wiring of the LED through. And I'll do the same with this one and the 2 main front lights. And I also painted the inside of these lamps, or lights, in white, so I hope there will be a bit more reflection of the light in here. All the wires are now connected in the middle console and they're tucked away neatly, so I can now cover the middle console. These are the front lights. Sadly, I forgot those 2, but I'm not going to rip that all out now just to add those 2 lights. That's just one of those things that can go wrong. Yeah, I had to take off all the wheels. Yeah, and the other carriage I glued in all the wires, and as you can see, one of the ladders is gone. I accidentally broke that one off. And while handling the rover, I also broke off the back one, but that's still intact. I can just glue that on. Yes, so now I'll glue in the battery pack. That's with double-sided tape. Now that the LEDs are in and the wires are tucked away, it's time to add all the light covers, the windows and the last details. base is just barely thick enough for the battery, so I'm going to thicken this a little bit. And I'm not going to add a whole sheet, but just a few strips to elevate the base, so I can then fit the battery inside. So that's the frame. Now it sits much higher. And now I want to add a little switch to the side, so I cut a little opening for that. Now it's time to glue the base to the hangar and finish up the wiring. And as I said in the beginning, the very last parts to glue in are the light covers. Luckily no LED broke and I can glue in the resin printed covers. The terrain gets a light dry brushing and a fair amount of pigment powder. If you've been along for the whole build, thank you so much. This one took longer than expected, and it was more fun for knowing you were watching it come together. And that's the rover done. If this is your first time here, episodes 1 through 3 are linked below. Worth a watch if you want to see how all of this started. Next build is already on the workbench. I'll see you there.